away.
Thank you very much, guys. As the crowd erupts, I'm here with Ming after that fantastic victory, only dropping one game in the series. Ming, did you ever feel like the series was in danger after you guys lost that third game?
你们刚刚在输掉第3局比赛之后，有没有觉得说可能会输掉这个 BO5呢？
我觉得我们输到第3把的时候，应该是心情有点低落吧。但是我们后面开始比赛的时候，把心情调起来了。然后，而且我们觉得我们第4把阵容的话，打到后期的话是能赢他们的。
After losing the third game, we were a little bit disappointed, but we were able to adjust our mentality and then come back into the 4th game. We knew that we had a better team comp in the late game, so we were able to win the game.
Well, an important factor in those team comps was Soraka, the first time we see it here at Worlds. Why do you think it was a good pick in the games you played today?
你今天多次选出了就是奶妈这个英雄，那为什么一直在选索拉卡这个英雄呢？是有什么特别的原因吗？
我觉得，因为前面2把是因为奶妈可以打风女，然后第4把的话是因为觉得奶妈比其他辅助英雄选出来会好一点，因为我可以远处给那个飞机大招，然后他单带的话会很无敌那种。
So for the first 2 games when I chose Soraka, it's because that Soraka is kind of a counter to Janna. And for the 4th game, it was the best support out there because when we had a Corki, and it was easy for me to just use my ult and then help our Corki split push.
And you had a great game as well. Together with Uzi in the bottom lane, you guys have been crushing it, and now you're going up against Bang and Wolf. What can you tell me about that matchup?
所以你跟小狗在下路的话配合都很好嘛，然后这局打得很出彩。那你们接下来将要迎战的对手是 Bang 跟 Wolf， 你有什么想法吗？
我还是保持好发挥吧。然后打上他们的话，他们下路也很强嘛，因为我看他们比赛看的也比较多，然后也很稳。然后我们下路老总跟他们打的话，我觉得下路我们2个打好的话，应该也是能赢他们的。2个打好能赢他们。
So I think that Bang and Wolf are very strong opponents, and we need to keep on performing consistently. Even though they're very strong, if we perform very consistently, I think we still have a really good chance of winning against them.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much, Ming. Thank you, Lexi, as well. Through all the crowd noises, back over to you guys.
Thank you very much, Shocks. They will have a tough task ahead of them as they face SKT in the next round. Bang and Wolf, a very strong duo to go up against. But I want to continue talking about this RNG roster and what they've done today. Let's talk about a few more of the members, right? Key players in terms of creating that victory.
The guy that I really want to talk about and start with is Xiaohu, particularly because of the Corki pick. The audience didn't erupt just because it was the Corki. It was because it was Xiaohu's Corki. Now, this pick is super important because when RNG lost to Team WE in the spring final, they said that it was because they didn't have a late game damage threat. So Xiaohu actually went to his champion pool, got the Corki because he thought it was the perfect answer. And the next time that they ran into WE in the semifinals before the summer split, that was the pick that allowed them to finally overturn that team and make it into the finals. So it was a huge thing to say, like, okay, it's a game-winning moment. We need to go late. I'm going back to the Corki.
So you can highlight Xiaohu, but for me, I think the game winner was someone that was a very mixed player here in MLXG because if you look at game 2, they should have lost. That was a Baron steal. If you look at game 3, they should have lost. That's 2 more Baron steals. Had those 2 steals not happened, that would have been 2-1 Fnatic being up, and I think this would have been a massively different series. This was so much closer than I think the result speaks to it, that the performances from the players, even though they weren't super solid every step of the way, they were just so critical at the right times that I feel like it was such a varied series for you to watch and just kind of wonder, how did it all happen?
Yeah, I actually completely agree. I thought that while the lows are very low for MLXC, the highs were very high. I mean, the Baron steals. I also think that just kind of the mechanical outplay on Reckless in the bottom lane, the flag and drag essentially backwards, like 1 foot, knocking Reckless out of his rocket jump was something I had never really seen. So definitely has some very impressive plays. And here we have Reckless. He's gotten up. He's feeling better. And
during the interview with Ming, Reckless able to get up, recognize the crowd as they recognize him back. Massive respect to him, what he's done throughout his career. We hope to see him continue, but only time will tell there. As we talk about the series as a whole, you know, and the highs and the lows for every individual, if we're going to recognize players on Fnatic, for example, I think Soaz has to be talked about. I mean, this is a guy, remember, I'm going to go back to the group stages again, right? When we talked about the mentality, this is a guy who had to struggle with some of his own demons in that moment. run it back through groups, and then here, when they're on the verge of defeat, he has to be the one with intelligent plays to keep them in it.
Yeah, and it was also on his signature Gnar pick. This is a big favorite of him domestically. He was like 9-1 on it domestically, and then comes out huge in this quarterfinal, single-handedly almost winning them a game a couple of times. So huge props to Soaz to overcome not only the mental hurdle, but then convincing his team so they can trust him that he can carry.
I actually think in that specific game 3, no other top laner in the world would have been able to pull off what Soaz did, because nobody has that playstyle. He's been doing this every year, always trying to 1v5, escaping a million people at the same time, and it actually pays off in a quarterfinals match. I really don't think there's anybody else he could put in that situation, the best top laner ever, and he does not have that toolkit to pull that off.
I mean, you have to play the game in such a different way to actually maneuver a victory. This is not just a lane-dominant situation that gets you out of it. It's drawing all the pressure. It's avoiding dying. It's finding something where there's nothing, and I think Soaz really excelled.
There's a famous quote that says, "I'm not the best because of how hard I practice. I'm the best because I've seen every single experience. I've done every single circumstance. I know exactly how to react to it." And I think that's the veteranship showing through.
I'm glad to see him perform on the world stage with that experience. Time now to throw it over to Shox one more time to talk to RNG's mid laner.
Thank you very much. We're also able to talk to Xiaohu. And Xiaohu, when we looked at the player camps throughout the day, maybe not that game 3, but for the rest, you guys were always smiling and seemed quite happy to play. Were you very confident in that you could bring the victory home today?
所以一开始在看到你们的所有的选手上头的时候，看你们一直全程都在笑，每场比赛都在笑。那你们对于今天能够取得这场 BO5 的胜利有多大的信心呢？
其实我们对这场 BO5 胜利是很有信心的。我觉得我们只要发挥没问题，就完全可以赢下来的。所以大家都是比较放松的心态吧。
We were pretty confident in going to today's best of 5 series. We know that if we performed very consistently and we didn't really make a lot of mistakes, we were able to bring the victory home.
But preparing will also be very important for next week, that huge clash of RNG versus SKT, and you personally versus Faker. What are your thoughts going into that matchup versus someone who carried really hard yesterday?
所以你们接下来的话将要对战 SKT， 然后你个人的话呢会将要跟 Faker 去对线，然后对于昨天的比赛当中的话 ，Faker 是强烈的 carry 了嘛？那你对这有什么感想或者什么感言想说吗？
我觉得他 carry 是很正常的吧，因为他的名字叫做 Faker。但是等下周到上海跟他的对战之中，我也不会落下风的。
I think it's very normal for Faker to carry just because he is Faker. But next week in Shanghai, I don't think laning against him, I'll be at a disadvantage at all.
All right, and what you always have is that 6-man. The crowd here has been incredibly loud. They'll be even louder in Shanghai. What's it been like taking the energy from that crowd to perform on the Rift?
所以我们所有主场队伍的话，都好像说每支队伍上都有第6名成员一样。我们的观众这边非常的热情，在给你们加油鼓励啊。那你觉得对于你们来讲的话，有多大的信心能助长多大的信心呢？
我觉得这么多观众跟我们加油助威，我觉得在所有的属性中都可以提升个50%吧。
With all the crowd cheering for us, I think it's at least like a 50% buff for us.
Yeah, it definitely is. Well, thank you very much, Xiaohu. Thank you, Lexi. Back over to you guys.
Thank you, Shox. Xiaohu put up a great performance today, particularly in that 4th game, ending the series. But as it was called out, today he was playing against World's Rookie in Caps. Next week, he goes against the best player in the history of League of Legends. That's quite an adjustment you need to make.
Yeah, it certainly is, and especially despite the fact that SKT has shown some weaknesses, I feel like Faker has not really been showing the same ones. I still think that individually he's been performing at an extremely high level. And, you know, as it was called out in the series yesterday against Misfits, I thought Faker was almost hard carrying that series. Like him and Huni performed exceptionally well.
But at the same breath, I mean, he's already killed Faker before. MSI, SKT versus RNG. Xiaohu's been there, done that.
After that MSI, he specifically said that he felt like his level of skill was at such a disparity compared to Faker. So he's had some time to shape things up, but he's still not at the level where he can look down Faker and say, yeah, I'll take him on. I'll take him on.
All right, well, he gets a week to prepare for that matchup. We were talking about Soaz and the incredible performance from him today, so it seems only fair that we toss it back down to Shox one more time for an interview with Fnatic's top laner.
Thanks again, guys. I have Soaz here to talk a couple of words to. First up, I want to ask you, what do you think it came down to today specifically?
probably like decisiveness. Like, I don't know if it's an English word actually, but yeah, decisiveness. Yeah, I felt like most of the games we had the lead actually, but we didn't really know how to snowball it because they are not really contesting anything, and I think there's like a clear, like, we had some good things, but then we just misstep or misdo something once, and then we just lost like 2 games when we had like big leads. So yeah, we are just not decisive enough in terms of what to do and not to do it sometimes in the games, even though we had like most of the time leads. Yeah.
Do you think that has, or you can think about that a bit more clearly just because you do have a couple of rookies on the team and that this is the first year that you guys are coming to Worlds together? Do you think that makes it easier to kind of swallow?
I don't think so. I think there's a lot of it that it will be like Reckless, this and me that could have noticed. Like for example, the Vayne game. Like I think we could have win it 100% if we are just actually sieging. We were saying in the game that we couldn't like siege, but we are so far ahead that I think we could have. So yeah, there's like the bound thing. This is the same game. Like I think the Vayne game was the most winnable one. We are just like thinking wrong about how to approach the game, I think. But besides that, I think in every single game there's just a mistake of everyone, you know. So I don't think it's like it was necessarily someone in particular in today's games. There's just team mistakes overall here and there, and then just like we just threw the game at some point in every single game. Yeah.
Yeah, it's obviously hard to think about that in the day itself, but when you take a look back at the year as a whole and where you guys came from, the kind of falling down at Rift Rivals and then still coming here, making it out of groups, making it to quarters, that 3rd game even, it's been crazy. How do you look back on all of that?
Well, before going to Worlds, we obviously expected to like get off planes and all this kind of stuff. Getting out of groups was really difficult. I think we had a fine group, in my opinion. I think we could have, like, first we could have been a lot better. It's best of 1, so anything can happen. But I think if we had the right mentality and coming out of for these best of 1s, we could have probably like take more wins and like don't need luck and Longs are winning all their games to like make it out. So today was more of like eventually showing that we are like an actual Go team and we didn't get there because of luck. Most of our games were really close against RNG. I think it could have go either way. So I'm sad because we it was so close, like most of our games, and we had leads. So it was really apparent to us that we could win all these games. So this was the sad part. But in the same time, we made every single game like pretty big mistakes of like just throwing. So yeah.
I thought you were going to end with that you were still glad you were able to show something, because you did in the end.
Not sure.
All right. Well, thank you in any case for the interview and for making a great run at Worlds with Fnatic. Thank you very much, Soaz. Back over to you guys.
Thank you, Shox, one of the players who's been around longest of all, right? And you can see the wheels turning there as he tries to, replay the series in his brain and identify what went wrong and where they could have made bigger decisions. And he called it out himself. I think it was on the veterans. I think it was on us, the 3 veterans, to identify some of the things and where we could have made, bigger moves to taking the series.
I mean, backstage, I was talking to Papa, debating about Soaz, and he's actually the most accomplished Western player of all time, with more titles than pretty much anybody else from NA or EU.
Yeah, he's also had a lot of world success here too, and I think that's a big part of that. It's not just his regional dominance, it's that he has been able to hold up internationally when many others were not able to, and I think he nailed it. I do think it came down to decisiveness. It was not that they were massively outskilled. It's not that they had no chance in this series. It certainly was just decision making, but that's one of the most difficult parts of the game, is understanding what is the best decision in any given circumstance, right? Because there's so much going on in any game. There's so many complexities and little minute details that change which decision is the correct decision. And even the Vayne thing I thought was pretty interesting, because Vayne is thought of as this awful siege champion, but as he said, with the lead that we had, we maybe should have been able to do it anyway. And And that's something that really can decide these series.
It's not a position I'm envious of. And while we say goodbye to Fnatic, RNG have to refocus on SKT next week. We had a lot of great performances today, but we'd like to recognize one player, or one person rather, as the player of the series. And today, that accolade goes to Uzi himself.
And the thing is if we're going to credit Soaz for all of his international success, his domestic success, we also have to do the same for Uzi. Yes, he's never won an LPL championship, but he has been in so many LPL finals. He has been so great for so long, making what, 2 Worlds finals, now trying to go for his 3rd one. And this series just reminded everyone why. The mechanical flashiness, the instantaneous, aggressive decision making. This is everything that you ever want to love about League of Legends. He's flashy, he's bold, he's explosive.
Definitely agree. I mean, he's been at the highest levels for so long, and it's kind of funny, you're talking about, well, the high highs. He also does have some of those low lows, dying to the turret, kind of tanking that up. But he's a player that I think you get both from because he has so much confidence in his own play, and he's willing to take these risky plays. He's willing to go for something that many people would consider 50-50, but he has the confidence in his own play to pull off them.
You don't see great success without great failure.
Yeah, that just means he outplays you whenever he wants. If he's made a mistake, he's just said
he's only outplayed himself. You cannot outplay him.
Not today.
All right, but here's the thing. He's been to 2 World Finals. To get to his 3rd, he's going to have to go through SK Telecom T1. With our first semi-final match locked in, let's go ahead and pull up that bracket. RNG are headed to Shanghai, where they will face the reigning champions in SK Telecom T1 on October 28th. Now we need to see who will face Samsung Galaxy, Team WE, or Cloud9. Both play-in teams that have made the run here. Who's going to take it? How are we feeling about this matchup?
I mean, everyone should know how I feel. I've said from the very beginning that I think that Team WE are the strongest LPL team. We saw a great surge from EDG at the end of groups. We saw RNG just take down Fnatic, so I expect decisive and dominant victory from WE tomorrow.
Yeah, at this point, I'm taking Frost's word on the LPL after seeing what RNG did. So what she said, completely agree.
I mean, I think coming into the quarterfinals, everyone was saying that the #1 seeds were going to be favored across the board. And despite the fact that we have had some very back and forth matchups and the upset with Samsung, I still do have the confidence that WE should take this series based on what they showed in groups. But I think it could be a close one. And I think that where Cloud9 could get an in is through the draft, because they have shown the ability to adapt. They have shown the ability to innovate. And if you can actually pull out a pick that can get you some wins, as we saw in Misfits versus SKT, if you have the confidence to believe in yourself and kind of go for these off-meta picks, you could maybe make something happen.
And I don't think it's just draft, because Soaz was mentioning that the decisiveness was what was lacking out of Fnatic today, but Cloud9, to contrast that, decisiveness has been their entire motto this tournament. When they win, it looks great. When they lose, it looks like they're very decisive in their losses as well. Like, yeah, we were going to lose this one. We tried really hard. And
playing
so
to win.
If WE is actually going to be struggling or slowing down at some point, that's an opportunity for Cloud9 to get in there, try to get some wins, and give us another one of these series that we don't really expect to go.
It's also underlining where Team WE do slow down, which is in CA. So if we're going to talk about CA, you have to look at Jinsen on the other side. He's the golden child of C9, and I definitely think C9 through Jinsen can exploit WE's mid lane for victory.
3 down, 1 to go, but we're done for tonight. So for myself, the casters, and the entire live broadcast crew, thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the show, or rather after the show for Worlds Tonight, where Freak, Deficio, and Frostkern will break down RNG's win and look towards the next match. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow for more Worlds 2017. Good night.